everyone.
Good afternoon, ladies.
Bonjour, bonjour.
How are you guys doing?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I see we got the memo to be dressed in the same color. That's awesome.
And I, of course, am oppositional and chose not to.
Shocker. Say it isn't so, Doc.
The sky is blue, the sun is bright. Here we are today.
Allegedly. So why don't you introduce yourself, Dr. Kosterman, for those that do not know you, which I find that to be a very short list, but it could happen. There could be somebody on here from like Zaire or something like that.
Oh my gosh, and if so, welcome. I'd love to chat with you. So my name is Krista Kosterman. I'm the Chief Science Officer here at the DNA Company. So I have the privilege and pleasure of both directing our clinic insofar as the clinical care that we offer to our clients, as well as the research and development here. So I get to be Chief Nerd. I'm petitioning to have my title changed to Chief Nerd. It'll happen one day. But I get the pleasure of developing our research, and separately where we put a lot of our energies and efforts into not only the genes we're looking at, but how we continue to support a lot of our clinicians, because our goal, not only on the clinic side of making medicine accessible to any patient off the street, very dear to my heart and very important to us, as well as making the information that we have incredible grasp on the application of functional genetics accessible to clinical practitioners, because that's really where we can offer our intelligence and what we know to the world by supporting clinicians, helping them to understand the power of functional genomics within their practice so that they in turn can support their patients. So that is what I get to do in my day to day.
Excellent. Thank you, Doctor. And of course, my Chief Operating Officer, the queen of all that is good, Allison Henry. Allison, in fact, most of these people logging on here probably deal with you on a daily or on a weekly basis, right?
Yeah, no, it's been great. So I've been part of the team now for a number of years and, done a few different roles over my time here, but always been very plugged into the provider side of our business and understanding, who the external practitioners are that are interested in adding this offering to their clinic to support their patients, and how we can structure that for them, not only for the betterment of their patient outcomes, but also from a business perspective. At the end of the day, we have to be sustainable in our business practices to be able to offer what we do and all of that to people that truly need it. So that's where I've kind of been plugged in, and really do enjoy getting to know the providers, the doctors, the coaches, the different types of practitioners that are interested in learning and growing, and how we can support them, right? I'll be interested to see what the poll results bring up and the type of people that are joining us. And then not only that, but I know there'll be a lot of people watching after and watching the replay. So thanks to everyone who could make it this evening. And for those watching after the fact, we're happy to support you and welcome questions and interactions with us as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Allie. And for those of you that don't know, my name is Tracy Wood, and I am the CEO for the DNA Company. I have been CEO for a little over a year now. And I actually was appointed to this position by Kashif as he wanted to venture out and do some different things in the one-on-one coaching and speaking circuit. And I have taken over the company from then to now. One of the things that I hear a lot, right? We have 30,000 providers. Do you guys know that? We have 30,000 providers all over the world that buy our testing, use our education, come to our webinars, come to our podcast, that actually have taken what we have been teaching for the last 10 years, right? The company's been going for the last 10 years, and taking that information and applying it into their business. And I think that number is important. 30,000 practitioners. These are people that could be nutritionists, they could be chiropractors, they could be MDs, DOs, anyone with 3 letters after their name. We have that ability to reach out to them and to provide them the education and the support. And what Ali was saying was really important, and that is the support piece. You know, again, when I got here a year and a half ago, our clinic support reputation wasn't stellar. We had some challenges. I mean, right? I mean, ladies, let's own that, right? We had some challenges, but we have done the ultimate 180 from where we were when this provider network grew to the size that it did. And one of the things that was really important is to teach them how to make money. I mean, Allison's right. Yes, this is a business, right? This is the business of medicine. This is a multi-billion-dollar business anywhere in the world, and wellness especially, right? Wellness has gained so much traction. I remember when functional medicine or functional practitioners was like a dirty word, and people would make fun and wouldn't take them seriously. Yet these were people that had an MD or they had a DO, but they looked at a patient holistically. They looked at that person from the ground up. And as we know, in the last several years in medicine, most drugs are being developed from a genetic foundation, from that ground up. So the ground up for our practitioners is that genetic code, is that report that we provide. And for the longest time, we only did one thing. All we did was give you that one report. We were one and done. And last year, as we continued to grow the business, many of us were in on these conversations. We decided that we had to do things differently because it is a business, but we care what happens to these patients. We care about their life. We care about their well-being. And we can't be all things to all people, but we certainly can try, and we certainly can educate the provider group. So, you know, I'm excited to have this conversation today. Again, you know, we're here to teach you all how to make money, and I can teach you how to make a lot of money. I've made a lot of people, including myself, a lot of money in my life. But we want to teach you how to make money and feel good about it, and feel like you're contributing to the greater good, and feel like you're giving something back. You know, it's really great that 2 out of 3 of us here drive really nice sports cars, but that's because we invested well and we managed our money. And see, you just outed yourself. All you had to do was not smile, and everybody would have blamed the doctor. They'd have blamed her hands down, but you blew it. So it's, you know, it's one of those things, Ellie, you got to get that poker face.
No, it's so funny, right? I love hearing you start a story off that way, Tracy. Get people's interest piqued, right?
Right.
And curious though, and that's kind of a really good point. Like being curious in understanding, you know, how to better how you serve your patients, right? And that's what changed us from just the one option to what else do we need to bring into the suite, into the offering. And, you know, having providers that were engaged with us, that were also curious for knowledge, right? Which is why we're, you know, putting a lot of focus and energy into developing our, you know, education platform and really building that out, right? So I think I just wanted to highlight that, because I think for those that are here, please fill out the poll so that we can get a better understanding of what you know about us, what your interests are, and where we really need to kind of channel this conversation so that we can give you the information that also gets you driving as nice a car as Tracy, if that's something that you're interested in. So
I have a very nice car, people. It's important. I have no shame in that. I worked very hard for my car, but so does every practitioner on here, right? Every practitioner on here is seeing as many people as they possibly can. They're trying to create a level of efficacy in everything that they do. They get bombarded by, 250 different supplement manufacturers. They've got drug reps coming in the door, offering free back waxing. I mean, there's so many things that come at the practitioners. It's just absurd. So the goal really is, like Allison said, we want to teach you guys how to make money. We want to teach you how to contribute to the greater good and to give back to your patients. But we want to do it with today's technology, today's accepted science. And we know science is going to change, right? We know it's going to change. I mean, in 1890, cocaine tooth drops was a product, and it was sold in the Sears and Roebuck catalog. Cocaine tooth drops. That's what it was called. They also sold vibrators to cure hysteria, which was a woman's disease, also sold by Sears and Roebuck. And then, of course, fen-phen, right? Fen-phen and dexatrim. We all took speed together in high school, right? Everybody had it, right? We did it as a family. So science changes, right? What we know now is vastly different than what we knew 10 years ago. Right? I mean, just think about the pandemic we came through. Think of everything we learned through that process. Whether you agree with it or whether you don't, that's not relevant. What's relevant is shit got real. And for those of you that don't know, and Julius, please, for God's sake, put a disclaimer. I swear, it is what it is. I apologize.
Tracy.
And that's why Dr. Kosterman has the swear jar, and I just write a check. I don't care anymore.
It's called my beach fund. It's going to take me to a very warm beach at the end of the year, and I'm very happy about it.
Yes. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking about, as science evolves, we're evolving. As genetics and functional genomics evolves, we're going to help keep you there. So as part of our provider network, it's really important that you know about DNA University. If you have not taken the course, it's accredited. You get more letters after your name. If it's something you want to do, we'll help you do that. But we want you to get the core message here is we can help you with your practice. We can help you make money. We can help you with records management, things like that. But our goal is to educate and to continue to propagate that education. And that's really the goal that we have. And I'm getting messages from Beth down here. Am I supposed to look at those? Okay, so let's take a look at the poll. Beth, do we have that? Julius, can you put it up for me?
Perfect.
Okay. Wow. No one is using testing in their practice.
They're honest. I value
Interesting. No, that's fantastic. And we've got a lot of people that do wellness coaching. That's awesome. Some people that use FSA and HSA. That's good. And they know a little bit about, what we didn't add in number 4. Does anybody see something missing?
pop quiz.
I want to know what their focus is, like what their
Right, but do you see anything missing in the selection on number 4?
Okay.
Come on, guys.
DNA.
The DNA 360 test, the flagship product. We didn't put it up there. That was my fault. So this is interesting. And most of you are sole practitioners. Mm-hmm. So I think that some of the stuff that I would want to share, Allison, and let me know what your thoughts are, is let's talk about the testing, what the testing does, how it validates, explain, strike that, have Dr. Kosterman, because she's got more letters after her name, have Dr. Kosterman kind of explain how she applies it in her private practice and see if there's stuff that we can share with these guys so that they have a better understanding of how to make some money.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. So if you want to just start with the DNA 360, I think that's the best place to begin, and just we'll run through everything briefly so that everyone gets a good understanding of the options that we have, the application, and then we can talk more after that.
Yeah, so the DNA 360 is our flagship product for a reason. It's how we got into business insofar as making sense of all the noise that comes alongside genetic reports. So as you know, you run someone's DNA, you're going to get a long computer file of numbers and letters, and there's many machines or codes on the internet that you can put this through and get feedback for. The struggle with a lot of that is the so what, right? Namely, how do you actually wrap that into your practice? Because it's very interesting if a person has wet or dry earwax, but so what to the practice? So what we do is we look through genes, and our litmus test for should a gene be included or not is, does it change clinical care? So if I have one gene type and Allison here has the literal opposite, does that change the way that myself as a practitioner would treat us? If the answer is no, we don't include it. So one of the big differences between us and plainly many other tests on the market is that we don't do as many genes as they do because A, the genes don't have a lot of clinical data. If we don't have clinical data that says this gene truly does impact your clinical care, again, we're not incorporating that until there's more sufficient data, sufficient evidence. And then separate to that, does it change a clinical care plan? Earwax is rarely ever, earwax will probably never change a clinical care plan. Whereas a gene that tells you, how do you process your noradrenaline? How do you use your insulin? Those sorts of genes have incredible impact on the care plan. So we run currently just over 70 different genes. In the future, at the end of the year, we're hoping to bump that up to about 100. And all of these will be broken down into different systems. We really like to focus on pathways. So for example, right now, methylation is the big sexy pathway out there. Methylation, as many of you know, is many, many, many steps, right? Most companies will focus on MTHFR, right? One step. We look at 8 different SNPs that are associated with this because, and I'll be very plain, and this is a bit of an education bump, right? If you look at one step alone, it's kind of like watching a sports game. I'm totally into sports. You're going to learn
football.
I watched my first American football game last year. It was delightful. Okay, so it's like watching all of those football players on a field, and you only focus on one, right? Football's a team sport. You need to look at them all. And so if you only treat one, you're likely going to make a mistake. And I see a lot of people, I do a lot of consults with doctors or with patients, and they'll be like, oh, this one provider told me my MTHFR and I had to take methylfolate because of it. And then I started getting really sick. But my gene said I have to, so I continued. And the reason that was wrong is they didn't look at the full team. So we look at the full team, and that will change clinical care. So we focus on pathways, we focus on detox, methylation, sex steroid hormones, which for a lot of people, especially in female-focused care, very important.
Right.
Moon behavior diet, we focus on the core that founds a person. And then when I think to my practice, how that's changed things, again, I tend to see the extremes, right? I see those that are super sick or those that are really well and want to live to forever, right? Those true hardcore biohackers. And in each instance, this has really shaped how I approach the person, right? So in the case of the person who's really sick, chronically ill, right? They've been sick for 10 years. They come in and they offer you a story that they've probably offered 10 other providers before you. And there's an element of they're no longer participating in the story. They're parroting it out. They're very tired. They share the story. And it's not that they're lying, it's just they're exhausted. And what the DNA 360, at least how it helps me with those clients, is that because I now know the foundational biochemistry, foundational physiology of the person, right? I can better inform that story. I can clean up the ground and then put medicine on top of that. Right? Medicine often isn't effective atop a dirty terrain, right? So if the person, for example, isn't eating properly to nourish their body, they don't have fuel to heal with that medicine. So it does a lot of cleanup, which is very helpful for the chronically ill, which again, those are hard needles to move. And then for the biohacker, right? They come in, they're already spectacular. How on earth do you help them when they're already spectacular, right? Our test will say, hey, this person's primed for a heart attack. So let's invest most of our energy and efforts into the cardiovascular system instead of maybe offering them because they have great detox. We don't necessarily need to focus there, for example. So it really helps refine where you put clinical effort. That's our 360.
Well, and that makes sense. I mean, if you think about, again, a lot of the practitioners that are on here, I mean, I don't know if the chat is on or off, but if it's on, just type what your area of specialty is into the chat window, just so that we can get an idea. You know, when we get someone that goes to a chiropractor, a lot of people go to chiropractors for both that body manipulation, but also for wellness and fitness and nutrition. And, you know, there's a lot that those folks can benefit from knowing that blueprint of that patient. It also can help them make sure that the supplementation they are recommending can be taken in by that patient, which was one of the new tests that we added last year. We took the foundation of our DNA 360 and we added pharmacogenomics. And pharmacogenomics, while you can now see that on, 5,000 websites everywhere, all over social media, they're not all looking at things from that DNA foundation. They're only looking at what they think your blood can and can't take. There's a lot of insights that come with that test, right? We can tell if somebody, let's say you're in behavioral health and you've got patients that you're writing prescriptions for. Some of them can't use those drugs, but you won't know unless you've got a pharmaco panel. So if you've got somebody that's manic depressive or clinically depressed and you've got them on a prescription, they have to wait 90 days, 120 days before you'll say, okay, let's try something else, or they'll say it's not working. What if they don't make 120 days? That happens. That happens a lot, and especially in behavioral health. So it was really important when we did Pharmaco to come back to our ecosystem and say, listen, not only now can you look at their DNA 360, and this will help you with nutrition, diet, fitness. It will help you understand how that person, how you get efficacy with that person in your core practice. But now we can show you, with most Americans on 3.5 prescription drugs any given day, some of those drugs might not be working, or some of those drugs could kill them, and they just don't know yet. So, that was a lot of the reason that I came to the DNA company, was because I wanted to work in that pharmaco space, but at a really deeper level. Anyone can do pharmaco. Taking someone's DNA and layering that information is a game changer. I mean, the third leading cause of death in America right now is medical mistakes. I mean, think about that. Zantac was one of the biggest drugs, OTC drugs, and even a prescription, right, for 20 years for acid reflux. Now it's linked to about 500 million lawsuits and cancer. So, with medical mistakes, we know that there's one death every day in the United States right now due to a medical mistake. We know that 1 in every 5 doses administered in a hospital are done so in error. They cause 1.3 million avoidable injuries. That's an actual CDC and WHO statistic. 1.3 million avoidable injuries. They don't just say injury. They say avoidable injury. Okay, that's huge. And it comes down to that med mal, right? But 7,000 of those avoidable, 1.3 million avoidable injuries, 7,000 of those people die every year in America. And this is expensive. When we have patients and we're treating them, whether we're a chiropractor, we've got a chiropractor here, we've got functional neurology. God bless you, Larry. That's a big one. Nutrition, internal medicine, cancer care, herbalist, more nutrition, dermatology. When you look at what it costs just for you guys to have your licenses, just for you to have a practice, a building, your insurances, this stuff gets expensive, and you need every single tool that you can afford. And when you're a small practice, I hear this 100 times a day. When you are a small practice, every single penny counts. So, it's important that we do have best in breed testing. We do have bleeding edge technology and information. And I think Pharmaco really helped us with that. But the other one was epigenetics, Doc, when we brought in DNAging.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
use that in your private practice, right?
I do. I do. So our our DNAging test, there we go. Alphabet soup tonight. This will look at, it's a way of peering into a body and asking, how is it doing? How is it aging? Right? So leading cause of death, aging eventually, outside of accidents and doctors' mistakes, it's truly aging, right? So it's
Right.
this idea that over time, as the body navigates the world, it incurs different environmental damages to the point where eventually the body's like, we don't have enough band-aids to hold together, right? And so what the DNAging test does is it looks inside the body, it's a blood sample, looks inside the body and says how much aging, how much of this environmental damage effectively has the body endured, right? And not every person ages the same. So this is really assessing for every calendar year that your body has gone through, so each 365 days of the year, how many days does your body think it's gone through? For those that are aging quicker, right, this means that that number is going to be bigger. Potentially. So for every year that your body's gone through, right? Ideally, if you're aging the same as the calendar, it'd be 1-for-1. But a lot of people, in particular, given diet, given they're not managing their genes properly, given stress, given lack of sleep, given all the things that she's owning up to, thank you very much, appreciate you. That means that their body is going to be aging quicker. Conversely, there's also people, especially your biohackers out there, who wear their hacking as a badge of honor. They might be, not always, I've been very surprised by this, but they might also be aging slower, meaning for every calendar year, their body thinks they've maybe gone through only 3/4 of a year. Right. And they're the people truly that, short of, an accident or something untoward, will make it to those 100 to those 120s in true, wonderful, good health. So we have a test, it looks at DNA and effectively says how much environmental damage has your DNA suffered. It's a little more complex than that. Happy to go into the science later, but it assesses how quickly you're aging. And I think as a clinician, the really, really, really exciting part of this test, and this part comes as part of our DNAging Complete, the really exciting part is not necessarily how quickly the body is aging, because that's a bit of a generic statement, right? You're going too fast, too slow, or just right, whatever that might be, is going to be the ability to look into the why, right? So with different methylation patterns, that's how we're assessing for this environmental damage. With different methylation patterns atop your DNA, we can, based on the beauty of computers, analyze those patterns. And we know that certain patterns are associated with, well, it's a cardiovascular issue, right? So that is what is accelerating this aging. Or maybe it says, hey, we can tell they drink too much. It is the drinking that is accelerating that aging. Hey, we know it's the immune system. There's some form of compromise there. That is what is fueling this aging. So when you look at more of the complete test, and I think this is so pivotal again to looking into what's going on and how do we refine where we invest our energies and efforts, is going to be that test that says, hey, it's actually not the immune system, which maybe is what you were clinically thinking it was going to be. It's actually blood sugar regulation. It's wiser to put energy and effort there. And so this is a test that, again, you can take once, you figure out where the person's at, and you take it, 6-12 months later, depends on the intervention, depends on what's going on. And it will tell you, have you shifted that needle at all? It's a really, really, a lot of, I would imagine the practitioners on this call, in particular, those who have to impart a lot of lifestyle and diet measures, right? When was the last time that you told someone to exercise and eat well? Did they actually comply and do it? And then separate to that, when was the last time they actually owned up and said, no, I didn't do it, right? Like, it's kind of like when you go to the dentist and the dentist is like, have you been flossing? And in your head, you're like, no, but maybe they can't tell. And you're like, uh-huh. And the dentist is like, your gums are bleeding, busted, right? This is our form of the dentist saying busted for not flossing.
So it's important to know that I floss, Dr. Kosterman, but other than that, I don't really listen to
so
anything
one check mark.
I got
Okay,
one. I got one out of 500.
One
Okay,
gold.
so let me ask you, Doc, how many times a year do you have these people in your private practice take this test? I mean, is this like the DNA 360 where you're one and done, or PGX and you're one and done? What's the deal?
Yeah, so with this, it depends on the person, but after that initial testing, depending on what they're coming in for, I will do it anywhere between 5 to 8 months later, for kind of a wellness plan. Usually it's once or twice a year, again, depending on what they're coming in for, but it is something I do repeat. In particular, that the complete test really that will penetrate into over the years, how are you doing in regards to your immune system, cardiovascular, et cetera, because that's that, I think with clinicians, we talk a lot about velocity of different measurements. How quickly is something changing, right? There can be positive change, there can be negative change, but this is when the key test I'm starting to watch velocity around. And so again, depending on the person and depending on where they are in their care, it could be up to 3 times a year, 2 times a year, somewhere in that space.
Okay. And we have a question in here from Angie. Angie is asking if you're a health coach, can there be a benefit? Angie, 1,000%, there can be a benefit. So we work with a lot of coaches. You can imagine 30,000 providers. We have coaches all over the world. Some of them are ICF certified. Some of them are just CPC standard. But at the end of the day, we designed the kits and the process of the education to be a financial model for you. So if you wanted to deploy testing in your clinic, you can do that. We have a retail price point, which we will never compete against our provider network. And then our providers all get to buy all of this stuff wholesale. So there's lots of different ways that you can make money on this model. And again, make progress, help these patients become well, and give them solid information that they can go back to and refer to over and over. But like Dr. Kosterman just said, you could also do, stage testing, right? So you can do an entrance, if you're doing a wellness coaching plan, you can do an entrance level barometer on these people. And then 6 months later, to do an efficacy check, go back through and test again on some of these things. And another one that we do recurring is the gut microbiome, right? The 360.
Yeah.
How do you use that in your practice?
Yeah. So this is Tracy's favorite test. It's a poop test.
I don't understand this. I know I'm the CEO, but whatever. I send you poop stickers. So when you guys buy a test, you're going to get a little poop sticker. That's from me.
Her and her alone, not me. All right. So for our fancy little poop test, you send a little bit of poop back to the lab analyzes it. So beautiful renaissance within medicine, right? We're recognizing that body is not ours alone. We're actually more bacteria and virus than we are actually ourselves. And so it seems foolish not to be looking into this as a health parameter, right? We know that your biome will educate not only your immune system, but your mood and your skin and several other things. It educates elements of your body. And so testing and understanding, in particular, the balance and the makeup. I think through, biome testing, initially we kind of would look at an individual species and be like, oh, that's the panacea, that's everything. And we'd get really obsessed with one species. And then every year we'd kind of flip to another one. And again, I would offer, just like with methylation, we can't look at just one gene because it's a team effort. I think the shift within biome analysis is really looking at different patterns. And are there key players within the patterns? Absolutely. There's some students in the class that are stronger than others. That said, we're looking at the entirety. And so we're looking at different populations and how they're balanced and how that will confer onto health. And we know the biome changes so often, right? You eat one Big Mac, your biome is going to portray that, a few hours later. And so biome testing is something that can be increased in frequency, again, depending on what you're working on. So someone comes into me, there is cause of distress and grief within biome. Obviously, we do a test right away. And sometimes I'm following that test up within 2 months, right?
Oh, wow.
Sometimes, right? Depends on what you're looking at. Sometimes, yes, it is 2 months because we want to know, right? Like, again, it's kind of like with any clinical effort that you put in, you want to know that you're getting benefit, right? And sometimes, especially with GI symptoms, especially those that are asymptomatic, meaning they're not feeling it, biome testing is one of the only ways we actually see, are we making progress?
Right.
And so sometimes they'll do it within 2 months, sometimes it might be 4 months later, right? Depending on what we're working on, and more from an annualized perspective, i.e., that person that comes in, they're doing A-okay, and you're not per se chasing anything down, that can be 1 to 2 times a year. Again, depending on the client's aptitude for what they're doing and the general propensities they have through 360.
Now, I got a question from a practitioner today about the gut-brain connection. And I guess we did a webinar not too long ago on that. But that's a big conversation right now in healthcare, right? That's a big conversation. So how do we participate in that?
Yeah, well, I would say again, just like gut brain is bidirectional, I would offer our 360 DNA 360 is bidirectional with our gut 360, right? So our DNA 360 really looks at how you process a lot of your neurotransmitters, and separate to that, how both detox and biome can be established within your body. Are you really great at setting up a biome community or not? If something goes wrong, are you good at cleaning up that mess, right? So that test right off the bat kind of tells you where the risk factors are in those two regards. And then the 360 kind of comes in, or the gut 360 to be specific, the gut 360 comes in as, so these are what we expect to be happening, what is actually happening. And then both of those in combination will guide a treatment plan. And then the gut 360 again can be leveraged as that follow-up of, have you made progress based on what we agreed to do, based on what you've been able to do. And I would say both are really important, right? If someone comes in and they're not feeling well, right? Asking them to do something, asking them to change is really, really difficult, right? So knowing their 360 that says, hey, they really struggle with motivation, or hey, they're really impulsive, knowing how they engage is really helpful to action them into a plan that can then change the biome and then in turn really push them forward, right? Just like this is bidirectional, our care plans have to be bidirectional and informed by many different perspectives.
Yeah. Allison, one of the things that you and I talked about today that we were talking about for some of our remote clinic people is these guys can't replicate themselves, right? I mean, put in the chat window for those of you that have a practice about how many patients you see every single week. Well, we've got some practitioners that see 8 people a day. They can't see more than 40 people in that week. I mean, these guys are spending a lot of time with their patients and clients, and they're trying to build really well-designed, structured plans for them, but they can't replicate themselves. So what can we do as an entity to try to support that without taking money out of their pocket?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's so many.
Suzanne sees 50 patients a week. You go, Susanna. Good Lord. Sorry, Ellie. That was awesome.
Okay.
She's the derm, so it makes sense. Good for you, though.
I just wanted to ask Dr. Kosterman, while we wait for other people to put some comments in the chat there. When people are doing these checkup efficacy tests, right? The epigenetic test, the gut test, and you're sitting with them then and going through those results. Like, how does that build the relationship between the practitioner and the client, right? And just that trust factor. It also guides a conversation if somebody isn't adhering to things, like it can steer it, right? So like, from your perspective, right, how does that help support the overall, program?
Yeah, well, let's be honest. I'll go back a little bit to the 360. There is a huge privilege there that person is having, to an extent of sitting down and having someone explain to them their blueprint, right? And to me, a lot of the relationship building can be, because it's not uncommon that someone will kind of give me a creeped out look and like, how did you know that? And I'd be like, oh, well, it's in your genes, right? I don't know you. I promise I haven't Google stalked you. I know nothing about you. I just have seen your genes. So yes, I know who you are and from that regard and what you're like, right? So there's an element of, not only is the person surprised by how much you can know about them, that builds trust, but separate to that, there's also a normalization, right? So for example, if genes say a person's more susceptible to depression, you say that, there's a moment where they're like, oh, so it's not my fault. Right. And that experience right there, you knowing and then saying, hey, this is part of you and we can change it, but also don't be ashamed of it. Again, there's incredible cultivation there. And especially the more tricky cases, right? Those who have been chronically sick, moving that needle even a little bit based on the fact that you know their physiology to an extent better than they do, right? Really garners so much trust and faith in you. Right. So there's a relationship building and then also a confidence because they're like, oh, you sound fancy, you're using fancy testing, you're using fancy words. Yeah.
So when we have practitioners using all of these types of testing, like obviously there's a lot for them to kind of understand and ways to implement this in their own programs that they're running, right? So I think that's what Tracy was kind of alluding to is, we sometimes help lighten the load, right? Like if you are already seeing 50 people, chances are you're doing a fantastic job. And, a lot of those people also have family members and friends that, are probably going to come across a time in their life where they, may not be feeling their best, right? So we quite often will work with our providers, clients, or patients through our remote clinic agreements. And, our experts can really kind of lighten the load, right? They can give you that comfort in knowing that, your patients are going to be well taken care of. So that's something that's also a great option for people as they build their business, because like Tracy said, you're only one person, there's only so much you can do, but sometimes bringing in a team to back you and to, help you duplicate yourself is a good strategy. Right. So engage with us and get to know how we operate and how we deal with people. And I think you can see the care and attention that we put into, understanding the science behind the testing, the application of it, the utilization, and how it can, better enhance what, the providers and practitioners are offering. I don't want to forget about the liquid biopsy because I know that there was a provider in the chat that mentioned that they do cancer care. So that's a really phenomenal test that we've added to the arsenal. And I'd love you to just do a quick overview of that one as well, please.
Yeah. So with our Liquid B, it is a gender-based test. So a female will have a different panel than a male. But the core product that both genders will get is it's a blood test, and it effectively will scan your blood and look for instances, patterns that are associated with cancer, and then more to the point, what forms of cancer. So it's used to effectively screen in your body, are there any croppings up of cancer, right? So we know that cancer comes about every single day, and then the immune system says, not today, and quashes it, right? And so this test is really looking at, not necessarily that one-off instance that the immune system has managed, but more this budding that the immune system is struggling to manage, and yet you're not, thankfully, symptomatic. You're not to a point where there's a tumor burden that brings you to the hospital. This is all that, to an extent, preventative screening, right? If there's something that is growing within the breast, for example, it's better to find that in the stage 0, the stage 1, than it is later on down the road. And so this is scanning blood, looking for DNA evidence that it is cropping up, and then supporting with next steps after that, right? So the gender bias of this, males will additionally get a prostate test. Females will additionally get CA-125, and then a very specific, especially in regards to early stage breast cancer test as well.
And it's important to know that the venipuncture that we do does screen for 50 different types of cancer. And right now, more than 70 of the cancers diagnosed on a regular basis in America have no testing until now. And while it is in FDA process, it has been FDA cleared, if you will, as an IDE, which means investigational device exemption, and they are studying the results and the efficacy and the outcomes. So it's a huge step in that detection. I mean, we had a friend of ours, one of the healthiest guys on the planet. He was the, Mr. I juice and I run. I don't run unless somebody's chasing me. And this guy was just like, he weighed 12 pounds soaking wet, and he was muscles from head to toe. I mean, he was just unbelievable. And I had 11 years on him, so I'm supposed to look like shit at my age. So I went to see him a year ago in July, and we were talking about marketing and all this stuff. And at Christmas, I sent him a Christmas card, and I got notified he died. And I went, what are you talking about? I just had lunch with him in July. July was 5 minutes ago. And he died because he had a specific form of colon cancer, and nobody knew. He had a 4-year-old little boy and a 6-year-old little boy. He left behind a grieving widow, and he didn't qualify for the Cologuard testing or any of the annualized tests yet. I mean, it was just shocking to me. So this test will change somebody's life. And that is a huge commitment that we have. Again, contribution to the greater good, giving the best we can to all of you, so all of you can go do that same thing. And we make it so that you've got records in-house and you've got clinical practitioners in-house. We have another, a plastic surgeon, unbelievable guy, down in Miami. You know who I'm talking about. I can't say it out loud, but you know who I'm talking about. Unbelievable guy. We do like all of his overflow. He's like 10 doctors now. Well, he's really one guy, and I have the other 9. And we do DNA testing for him, and everything is split. So he gets the revenue. His patients still have that connected tissue to him. We make sure all those results go into his remote clinic and his portal. And he's making an extra couple hundred G's a year, and we have all of the overhead. So that's why, again, we sent this out today saying, maximize your earnings. How do you make more money? How do you make more money in your business without killing yourself? I mean, Susanna, God bless you. You're seeing 50 people in a week. That's just absurd. But imagine the revenue if we could help grow another revenue stream for you. Imagine if you could make $100 to $150 for every test. And let's say you only test 10 people a week. That's an extra 4 G's at the end of the month. And if any of those people want to go into a wellness program or a fitness program, and for Angie on here, we are always looking for health coaches. So if you're looking to take patients, I'm looking for help as well. This is a reciprocal arrangement. We refer to our practitioners. We refer patients to our practitioners. We have started a program called Precision, and this is just a quick shameless plug for Precision, but Precision is literally for people who are the most unwell or have the most difficult challenges. In medicine, there's a concept that don't be looking for a zebra when it should only be a horse. Well, sometimes there's a zebra. And when there is, you need more eyeballs. You need more education. You need more help. You need a 360 view of who that patient is. And that's part of what we bring into the environment. So if you do have patients that are super difficult and they're at their wits' end and they're frustrated, bring them here. Reach out to us. Tell us what you've got. If we can support you, we will. And we will help you, one, care for the patient first and foremost, and secondly, how to make what's fundamentally fair in order to provide that care. So, there's a lot of different ways that we can help you guys make money. We can help you with testing. We can help you with supplements. I mean, right now, we currently have best-in-class supplements across the board. Our supplements are based on your genes. So Donna, your particular formula would be different than Elizabeth's formula, which would be different than Gabby's formula, and so on. And it's based on your height, your weight, your gender assigned at birth. Why does that matter? I don't know. Ask the doctor. She knows all of that. But the supplements literally can change your life. Now, I don't do any of the other stuff that she tells me to do. I'm going to own that. I don't. But I will give you credit for this, doctor. Dr. Kosterman made me supplements, and I take them religiously. I take 8 in the morning, I take 8 at night, and I have more energy. My brain does feel more clear, if you can imagine more of this brain. It's just unbelievable.
World.
I know, right? I'm going to take over. But I feel great, and I have a great amount of energy, and I, work out and lift weights 3 days a week. I mean, I lifted fucking 13,000 pounds yesterday in my workout on my tonal. So I'm 58 years old. I'm looking at my mother who's 84 years old, and she's in a wheelchair because she could no longer stand up. She didn't break anything. She's just old and her shit ain't working. Well, had she have maybe done a little bit more in her 50s, or had people like you guys, maybe, just maybe, someone would have looked at her nutrition and said, you're English, you eat brown food, we need to change that. You drink too much, you're a Scot, we really need to change that. And smoking from the time you were 4, probably not a great idea. But anyone that comes to you as a practitioner, anyone that comes to you as a patient, someone that wants to do business with you, someone that wants to network with you, you guys have got to have the ability to grow one another's business. And that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to help you guys grow your business. We're just like you. We have a bunch of practitioners. We have a bunch of patients. We do supplements. We do clinical interventions. And we have panels of people that are here to help you. We educate, we provide written material, we do all of those things. And you can use those things, again, to monetize your business, grow your footprint, expand what you do without spending a ton of money.
I think that's a good segue before we move into the questions. We will be including an offer with the replay where we can get you access to some testing and some bulk quantities. And then we've got a previously recorded webinar that we did with Kashif that's, again, on this topic of how to grow your business, how to increase your revenue. And we will be then hosting another session in the month of September where we can go through question and answers and really dive back into these different topics again. So Tracy, thank you for outlaying that so eloquently and kind of summarizing it into, a really nice package for everyone. So again, we're here. I think it's clear the different avenues that we can support you. We just need to better understand each of you and what it is that we can do for you. So reach out to us. We'll be including links where you can connect with us through email or book meetings with us if desired. And we'd love to be chatting with you guys. So we'll jump into the Q&A. And Dr. Kosterman, I'd like you to take a peek in there if you don't mind and look at Elizabeth's question to start with.
So Elizabeth is asking, does a liquid biopsy give information about what type of cancer is detected? And separately, what is the false positive rate for that test? So for the first guy, yes, it does give information about the cancer tested, right? So it will be specific, as well as it's very clear and plain, right? Some markers happen over several different sorts of cancers. So it will decry this is something seen in these sorts of cancers, or if it's something more specific, right? If it's something unique to that cancer, it will say this exact cancer. So it's transparent in what it's sharing and the frequency of it found and like the burden within the body. So yes, is the answer to that. What is the rate of false positives? So
I know the answer to that.
Oh, all right. I'm going to grade you. Go ahead.
As the CEO, I had to ask the question before I approved working with the vendor, but it is 0.5. So out of 200 people, essentially 1 false positive. And a positive test, thank you, Dr. Kosterman, a positive test will spike or trigger a test to be rerun at no additional charge, of course.
So what you heard, and I think this is very, very important, right? Because when you offer this information to people, right, especially a positive, reasonably so, there's a panic of fear. Fair enough. So the comment here is, if you get a positive result, we're going to triple check our work, and free of charge, that test is going to be done to validate, right? And to an extent, there's also going to be velocity information in that. We love our velocity, but everything is redone. We don't ever want to get into a situation where we're offering false information.
Right. We have Carrie has their hand up. Carrie, we're going to go ahead and unmute you. And then Matt, I see your question in the Q&A. We're going to answer that too. Carrie, you're muted. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, I think I made a mistake.
That's okay. Nice talking to you.
Cool.
Okay, Stephanie, how different is liquid biopsy from the Holy Grail test? I think she just means Grail test. So liquid biopsy, part of it is Grail, but we also have, like Dr. Kosterman said, for men, we do a PSA, and for women, we do a CA-125, which is cervical cancer, and then, of course, prostate cancer. And then separate and apart from that, we have a DNA test that is a teardrop production protein test.
It's a protein test.
It is a protein test, but it's our DNA company protein test. Thank you, doctor. Again, I stand corrected. And that is for breast cancer. The great thing about that test, the goal for us to bring that to market as quickly as we are trying to bring it, literally is accessibility. You know, they've just changed the rate at which they're testing in both Canada and the United States. And they're aging older and older for these tests. And, you know, we know that statistically younger women are getting breast cancer a lot younger than they ever did, 10 years, 15 years younger than they ever did. So that was one of the reasons that we wanted, to bring this out. So Matt, let's answer your question. So would love to hear your solutions to help reduce Medicare waste. Well, Matt, you're asking the right girl, but I'm not going to go on a Medicare tangent. I'm not going to go on a politics tangent, but I could. So Matt, if you ever wish to do that. So how do we help reduce Medicare waste, right? You know, when you go to an ER or an ED, and the minute you get there, you've already spent $3,500. So that's a problem. What about reverse and prevent? What about not getting there in the first place? What about finding out what your body was designed to do from the get-go? What about finding out that that statin they gave you is going to cause an allergic reaction before you ever have it? So, you know, we can look at medicine in a lot of ways, right? We call it practicing because nobody's gotten it down yet. But that doesn't mean that we don't have empirical data that allows us to look at a human and say, this would be fundamentally bad for you. This would be better for you. You know, there was it was the Boston Medical Something Institute. I just saw it like a week ago. And the doctor gets on and says, if every patient that I ever had listened to me tell them to stop eating like shit, stop drinking as much as they do, quit smoking, and get on a treadmill, would do any of those things, I would have no customers. And here at the DNA company, you know, we're not looking for you guys to figure out perfection. We're just saying progress, just little tiny things. Even if it's a better supplement regime, right? Even if it's, you know, reduction in certain behaviors that your body was never designed to tolerate. So to figure out Medicare waste, Matt, that's going to take you and I about 6 months to figure it out, but I have confidence we could do it. But you have to start with a blueprint. You have to know what you're dealing with. And that will improve quality scores, right? We know that the recidivism back into the ER is now costing these hospitals a great deal of money. And Medicare doesn't want to pay for it anymore. And they are being fined and they are withholding funds. And that comes from, again, those medical mistakes. I mean, every single patient in an ED today, right now, had one medication mistake made. They could have avoided it, but one was made. Now, maybe somebody caught it now that we've got nurses doing tertiary checks on every single drug and on every single tube and reading every single barcode. But what if they didn't? 7,000 people dying a year, that comes into these mistakes. It comes into that waste. It comes into that cost of delivery. And then your next question, any focus on independent primary care family medicine practitioners? Okay, so in my opinion, and this is simply my opinion, primary care or PCP, primary care physicians, can have a greater efficacy in using a virtualized business model. If you've got patients that are type 2 diabetics and you want them to get into a nutrition plan or a fitness program or something that benefits them, are you going to sit and do it with them? No way. You're a doctor. You've got 7 minutes to get to the next treatment room. And you're going to see 8 to 10 people in 1 hour every single day. That's what a PCP does in America. We know the average doctor's visit is 7 minutes. So how do you solve for that? Well, like Allison and I were talking about, one of our doctors down in Miami, he's a plastic surgeon. So when he's got these people that want to be a better version of themselves, want to change either how they look, how they feel, whatever it is, he says to them, listen, you need to figure out what to do once I'm done. I can help you today, but what do you do once I'm done? And that's where their testing came in. And that's where, again, our precision patients come in. We get people that have had cancer diagnosis. We get people that are struggling in addiction and recovery, and no one will take them. Well, when we find out genetically why that addiction is built into them the way it is, we find a way to help clear some of that in them and help them find a better way. So to address a primary care practice, you're going to look at specializing in certain things, nutrition, et cetera. Those are things that we can do for you. If you want to test your patients and allow your patients to get those results, while of course you get a copy, that gives a great deal of awareness to a lot of people. I mean, 80% of the people that we actually test, we never talk to. We don't hear from them. While they get a free consultation, most of them look at our reports and go, you know what, this is clear, this is easy. And the recommendations are there. And they literally can go through and look at it and go, you know what, I can do this. But then there's that 20% that need to talk to a Dr. Kosterman or a Dr. Varden or Justin Harris or any of the others that are on staff. And we put them into a virtual room, and that's where that continuing care picks up and creation of a program is done. So Matt, if you've got a primary care practice and you want us to help find ways to make you more money, just email me or email Allison. We're happy to help you, and we're happy to talk to you about it. We have more messages. How do we click on these? Yeah, Matt comes from NACO. Yes, I would love to talk to you, Matt. So email me. Beth, send him my private email address, please. And I think we got through the questions. I so could have gotten off on a tangent.
Tracy, I also
Sweet, you think you
touch
didn't?
on our upcoming digest and some of those other things.
Yeah. I forgot about. I've been doing all the talking. You can talk. I need a drink, and it's only water, doctor.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, there's a couple more questions coming in, but we also have like tons of opportunities for webinars and podcasts. If this is something that you feel like you want to know more about or learn about or have a discussion with your patients and support them, we'd love to connect with you on that as well. Dr. Kosterman, maybe if you want to take a moment just to chat about the digest and what we're doing with that. I know that you're involved in that project.
Yeah, so come this early fall, September, we are launching the very first DNA Digest. So this is an offering both to patients and clinicians alike. It's a place where we're putting a lot of information in, right? So it's a DNA Digest. It's inspired by the science and healthcare that we're offering. It's meant to be accessible to patients and to clinicians. So some of the articles within it are going to focus on, hey, if I was a doctor talking to a general audience and I wanted to impart some clinical wisdom or some tips about their genes or tips about lifestyle, here it is. And separate to that, we'll also have a few articles that go directly to docs. So we're really encouraging the accessibility of what we're doing, right? Part of the future of medicine is there's more of a collaborative element between doctors and between different healthcare teams and between people, right? Let's not ignore the fact that sometimes when people go on Dr. Google, it's very scary. They do things they shouldn't, but sometimes they also stumble on their own diagnosis. Medicine is becoming more and more collaborative between patient, doctor, and computer. And so this is a forum with which we'll support that. So a lot of fun stuff for patients, a lot of fun stuff for clinicians, and then some little nuggets as well for the nerds out there. We'll dive into kind of the genes that are getting me excited.
And one thing to note, if you have something you want to contribute to the digest, we created this so that people can hear from you. All of you are great at what you do. All of you have an area of specialty, something that you do different, something that you do that gets great efficacy or great patient feedback. If you want to share that, we want to publish that for you. You get full writer's cred, all of that. We're not jacking any of your information, but we want people to know who you are in our ecosystem. We have 500,000 eyeballs in this system, and we message these people all the time, and we keep bringing them what we consider to be the best biohacks, the latest science, the latest technology. So really, if you guys want to write, please do reach out to us. We're super excited about this. I think this is going to really be something. So,
and I think as well, something that Allison in particular is very passionate about is platforming a lot of our clinicians, our partnered clinicians. So ensuring that, especially when you have success stories, right? I worked with this client in this way, something that will either inspire other clinicians or separate, inspire people to seek help, right? Again, how often do we know that people get a little bit hopeless throughout their healthcare, right? Re-inspire someone, be like, oh, I have something similar, maybe I can be helped. So Allison is really spectacular at platforming our clinicians, and DNA Digest will also have platformed clinicians, which I think is important because, again, this is collaboration. We're all pulling together to support people in their
healthcare. Doc, there's another question. You want to take that in the Q&A?
Yeah, so Larry is asking if DNA will be offering a blood test apart from other p-tau 217. So p-tau, looking at an Alzheimer's test, a serum test, I believe. So we do not offer that, nor do we offer a targeted test for Alzheimer's per se. This said, we do look at genes that influence Alzheimer's to the extent of late onset dementia, some of the genes involved in that, but more separately and very important to this kind of to the umbrella that is dementia, right? We care about dementia as a topic, not just Alzheimer's. We look at a lot of different systems that will contribute to the hastening or the creation and the generation of such pathologies and what can be done to thwart that, to stop that. So I think, while not that specific test, we kind of look at a lot of stuff around that can contribute towards a medical plan that goes to the end of prevention, right? There's a lot of people walking out there with ApoE4 genes, for example, which according to DNA, you should be getting dementia, but you don't, right? So it's not just something that can be boiled down to one or two genes. We're looking at that suite, that body, and how do we support the person through that? Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Doctor. So we don't have any more questions in the Q&A, and I don't see anything else in the chat. Beth, if I'm missing something, let me know. The core message we want you guys to get here is we're here to facilitate. We're here to help you. We're here to help you grow your practice and expand your efficacy and expand your good works. That's the goal. And we want to do that again with science that we continue to study and test and verify and validate and then push it a little further. We are going to continue to do that. Dr. Kosterman said we're going to be showing another 30 genes, I think, within the next 90 to 120 days. That's true, but that's not where we end. The goal is for us to constantly be evolving, to be constantly in service to all of you and providing you with the best information we can get our hands on and validate the shit out of it and make sure that you guys have got stuff that's real and that you can use and, you know, not just some magazine that you're going to end up throwing, you know, in the waiting room bathroom because nobody's.
Yeah. If I could offer a thought to that end, I think when we started and we kind of said, hey, we did DNA 360 and then we added on all these other tests, and both Tracy and Allison very beautifully and eloquently said it was, to the end of supporting business and developing this model. I would also offer in parallel to that, right? And I mean this very sincerely, a lot of those tests were also birthed out of patient need, right? So I've been with the DNA company 5-ish years. I don't do time very well. Tracy might actually know how long I've been here. Been here for a while. For the first 3 years of that, right, it was seeing clients and patients day in, day out, supporting and counseling. I didn't have access to any of this testing. So people would fall in love with what I was able to tell them, the care I was able to offer. But then they would say after, especially I'd, explain their DNA, explained how they should be changing their life. They're like, well, what's next? Right? These tests were birthed out of that, right? Money is really important. I don't want to dissuade that. It's really important to practice. It's important to sustaining yourself as a clinician. But separate to that, to the end of patient care, all of these tests were designed and created and curated within the clinic to answer that question of, I'm very in love with what you know about me because of my DNA. No one else knows this. So how do we continue my care with you? How do we continue my prevention? And that's how these tests were selected. And I'm sure for many reasons that I don't understand and they can explain to you.
Yes. And the fact is as practitioners, never, ever be ashamed of making money. That's something I say to my people all the time. Never, ever be ashamed of making money. A lot of practitioners think that if they're making money, that's bad, that they should only be focused on care, all of that. You know what? Mother Teresa was a wonderful human being, but at the end of the day, she never had to pay for a plane ticket. So focus on making money. Focus on contributing to the greater good. Use tools like what we have to continue to grow your own ecosystem without OPEX, operational expenses increasing. Right? Come to people like us. And if we don't have a fit for you, we might make something. We might design a program because you've got a great idea and no one has facilitated. And, Allison doesn't have anything to do that week, so she'll just make some shit up. So come back to us, come into the webinars, come into the podcast. Go on to the website, log into the DNA journal or digest. And if you haven't already gotten your functional genomics certification, it is an accredited certification in the United States. Being a CFGP really is a thing. Then just sign up for DNA University. Let us help you. And then you've got lifetime access in DNAU. That means when we do roll out another 30 genes between now and the end of the year, you get all of that extra education for free. When we roll out additional testing, you get all the clinic education for free. When we write a paper, we've got 2 papers right now that we're working on with our lab partner. When those get published, one's at Harvard Med, one's at Brown, all of that you guys get first look for. So let us help you. Right? Let us be a part of the growing of your practice and helping you give back to the people in your community.
Yeah, it's so exciting, so amazing. Great way to end. I was going to add, but I don't think I can top that, Tracy. So yeah, people are advocating for themselves, and these tools really allow them and empower them to do that, right? So yeah, it's super exciting. Yeah, and I'm happy to be a part of this team. So I think if everyone's happy, let's just wrap up and let these wonderful participants get back to their days.
Yes, thank you all very much for coming. Have a great night. Everybody in the production team, thank you all very much. Oh, wait, we got a question. Hold up. Can you expand the explanation of precision? Well, I'm very glad you asked, Larry. Of course I can. So I am excited about my precision.
About this.
You know what?
To you, you're far too happy about this.
We have saved somebody's life, doctor.
I know.
And for that reason alone, I will talk about precision a million freaking times a day. So precision is an applied opportunity. So patients apply to be interviewed. We take all of their information. We send them a medical intake. They fill out the intake. We take that and then we put it into a panel, and none of this costs them anything. They go into a panel with 3 different practitioners that look at the human from different perspectives. And we delve into whatever the challenge is that they may have. And we ask them to load medical records, labs, imaging, all of it. And we take all of that information back after that interview, and we sit down as a clinical team and we look at all the different things that we think we can do to support the patient in a program. We design the program. We design the length of the program. Some of these programs are a year long. Some of these programs are $20,000, but they get hours upon hours upon hours of clinical treatment every single month, and testing far beyond what we do. We go to all of our resources in our network. We go to all of the people that we do business with. We ask for discounts for our people. We go and advocate for PET scans. I mean, you name it. It just depends on what that patient needs. And we go and figure it out. And then we take that solution back to the patient and say, hey, here's everything we found for you. Here's everything that we can do. And we're going to drive this whole bus. And we assign them a personal concierge that stays with them and literally is holding their hand all the way through the process. And then we produce desired results. And like I said, we've saved 1 life. I'm good. I'm okay with that. I'll take that one. So that's Precision, Larry. Thank you very much for asking. Anyone that has questions, our email is in the webinar chat box somewhere. I know Beth put it there, and I think we're good.
Yeah, until
Bye,
next time.
everybody.
Bonsoir.
Good night, guys. Thanks, everyone.